In this Elden Ring Nightreign video, we're going to be taking a look at Ironeye and how to play him in the game. In this video, we're going to cover things like how to use bows, what his stats are, what they mean, how his stat progression is in terms of HP, FP, and stamina, what his skills are, what they mean, and how to use them in combat, what weapons are suggested for him, as well as passive buffs on weapons and suggested relics as well, and also party composition. So if you've been wondering how to play Ironeye or just how to play Ironeye better in Elden Ring Nightreign, watch on for some useful information. So Ironeye, as his name suggests, is a very bow-focused character, and he will almost exclusively use a bow. This does not mean that he can't use melee weapons either, because he has a very high dexterity stat, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But predominantly, if you're going to be playing as Ironeye, you're probably going to be playing as a person that uses a bow. And there have been some changes to the way the bow operates in Elden Ring Nightreign, and the two major changes are that you can't jump and shoot and land and shoot instantly anymore with short bows. That's been removed from the game. And you also have infinite ammo, and there aren't different arrow types in the game. So it makes it operating the bow a little bit different. First of all, not having to worry about ammo is, thank God, that's just a huge improvement. But you won't be doing the jump and shoot, land and shoot attack pattern anymore. And you might think, well, that sucks, now I'm just going to shoot slower. But Ironeye actually shoots the bow faster than any other character in Elden Ring Nightreign. And he actually has a 4-hit sort of combo or attack chain that he'll do where he'll shoot 4 arrows very, very quickly compared to other characters. And then he'll have a little bit of a lull in between, and then he'll begin that 4 shots again. So if you're using a bow with another character, you're going to shoot much slower, and you're not going to be able to take advantage of the jump and shoot and land and shoot, although sprinting and rolling and shooting is still a thing, so you can do that on those characters, and you can on Ironeye as well. But predominantly with Ironeye, you're going to be moving around and just shooting with R1, because you'll fire more rapidly, and you don't have to worry about ammo. So if you want to play a bow user, you're definitely going to want to play Ironeye. So when you take a look at Ironeye in the visual codex under characters, you can see his attributes. These are kind of hidden in the game and they're not explained very well, and you don't have time to look at them when you're out in a run. But if you have time in between runs, you should definitely take a look at this. And the first thing you'll notice is that he's kind of in the middle for HP and FP, meaning he's not going to have a ton of health or a ton of mana in order to cast skills and things like that. And he has a decent amount of stamina, which is great because often Ironeye is pretty much regulated by the amount of stamina that he has. Like, he usually just chews through his stamina, and he usually has to wait for his stamina to replenish in order to be able to keep attacking. So increasing stamina is huge on him, and anything that increases stamina makes it so that he can keep his DPS up. So taking a look at his other stats, he's got C in strength, he's got A in dexterity, which is really good, which means he has a lot of dexterity. He's got D in intelligence and faith, so he's not going to be great at spell casting. And he has B in arcane, which is pretty decent. What this means is that he's going to excel with weapons that scale with dexterity, and these are the bows in the game. Most of the bows have S scaling in Elden Ring Nightreign, even though they didn't in Elden Ring. So any bows that he uses is going to take advantage of that dexterity stat, so that's something that's worth noting. And the other thing is, any melee weapons that scale with dexterity he can use very, very effectively. These are typically like curved swords, some straight swords, and other fast attacking weapons generally have high dexterity scaling. And you can actually go into the visual codex under weapons and see what each weapon scales with in this game to get an idea of the sort of weapons you should be looking for when playing him if you do want a melee weapon. Additionally, because he has decent arcane, he can use weapons that scale with arcane pretty well as well. These are pretty rare in my experience, so this is not a ton of weapons, but it can impact the amount of like blood loss buildup you do or poison buildup you do with weapons that have those, so that's worth noting as well. One of the major drawbacks of Ironeye, though, is that the first level doesn't give as much HP as some other characters get. And this is predominantly because he's a ranged, squishy character, so they don't want him to be super tanky, but you don't gain as much HP on that first level that other characters will gain. Some of them gain almost like 80% of their HP. Again, Ironeye gets markedly less than that, but nonetheless, it's still important to get that first level as quick as you can in order to have more health. Okay, let's take a look at Ironeye's skills. The first one is his passive ability called Eagle Eye. This makes it so that he is more likely to get items when he kills enemies, that they're more likely to drop them. It also applies to his party. So if Ironeye is in your party and you're playing as a different character, you will still get more drops. And if you're playing as Ironeye, you'll get more drops. So this is something that you should note as a player, that to be on the lookout when you defeat enemies. Because typically when you defeat enemies when you're playing Nightreign, you typically get nothing most of the time. It's not always true, but it's pretty rare to get stuff. But when you have Ironeye in the party, it's much more regular. So he's worth bringing along just for that passive benefit alone, because sometimes you can get some good gear from that. Not always, but it's a decent passive skill. It's certainly not the best one out of all the characters. So let's talk about the character skill marking and what that does. This skill has about a 12-second cooldown, so you can use it about every 12 seconds, but it really has 3 applications in my experience. So first of all, when you mark an enemy, you will increase the damage you do to them by about 10% for the duration of the mark. So this can help you deal more damage to them. So getting that on a target when you can is going to improve your overall damage. Secondly, if you attack the marked part of the target enough times, you will actually stagger them or stance break them depending on what type of enemy they are. And this can give your team a wide open opportunity to get like a critical strike or to just deal lots of damage while the boss or enemy is interrupted. So you want to make sure you're attacking that marked spot when possible. And if you keep attacking, it'll extend its duration, which will not only extend how much longer you can deal extra damage, but will make it easier to actually destroy that spot. And then thirdly, this character skill should be used as an evasive maneuver sometimes as well. There are a lot of fights where you simply just cannot get in close to a boss. It's not worth the gamble of trying to get in there and mark them. But you can use this opportunity to slide through a boss or difficult enemy and get behind them and avoid attacks. In my experience, it doesn't have iframes when you're using it, so you can't just, slide through any attack. But if you read the attack early enough, you can usually slide through with not enough time for the boss or monster to turn around completely in the middle of their animation and hit you, and it puts you behind them in a safe place. So you definitely want to use this as an evasive maneuver as well. A lot of times you have aggro playing Ironeye because you're continuously hitting the target more than just about any other character, and this can help keep you alive and avoid attacks. So the next ability is the ultimate art of Ironeye, which is called Single Shot. This fires a single powerful arrow that ignores the defenses of enemies, and it pierces all enemies and terrain and structures. So it's really good for, in my experience, just clearing lots of enemies simultaneously. There are a lot of boss fights where there are lots of enemies, or maybe just before a boss fight where you have to kill the bunch of enemies in order to get to the boss fight. There are great opportunities for this, and it has a really wide radius, and it can kind of like interrupt boss attacks as well when you hit them with it, which is really nice. And if you hold it, you can actually move the direction of it once in terms of like which direction you want to fire. So maybe you're like about to fire on a boss in front of you and they charge behind you, you could turn around real quick and still hit them. But the best application of this is definitely for like AoE clearing, where there are like camps on the map where there are lots of enemies grouped together. It can save your team a lot of time that they might spend like 30 seconds or 40 seconds clearing a camp by just wiping them out in one fell swoop. So if you're talking about what weapons to use as Ironeye, you're obviously going to be probably using a bow, otherwise you'd be playing a different character. So you're going to be looking out for bows. These typically can be found on bow racks in enemy encampments, so you want to look out for those, but they can drop from chests or as rewards for defeating bosses as well. But typically you're going to be using a bow. You can use a great bow sometimes. I like to use great bows in order to use rain of arrows, since they hit much harder than regular bows do in terms of that, but they have a slow attack speed compared to the bow that Ironeye will be using. And I just generally don't recommend them over bows. So most of the time you're going to be looking out for bows. And I highly suggest looking for bows that have status effects on them as well, because status effects are really king in this game, particularly in boss fights. So if you can get one with bleed on it, it's really good. If you can get one with poison on it, it's really good. I haven't seen one with Scarlet Rot, but I'm assuming you can randomly get Scarlet Rot on one as well. That would be really strong. I had a bow in one run with sleep on it. That was extremely powerful for putting enemies to sleep that we didn't want to deal with, but we took on other enemies. So there are a plethora of status effects. You can get frost on a bow. So I definitely recommend, looking for ones that have status effects. And also remember that you can use grease on bows in this game, so you can add poison to it, etc., in order to add status effects to your bow, or you can add frost grease in order to get frostbite buildup on your bow. So that's really, really deadly when you can make that happen. Now, the other thing to look out for when you're looking out for weapons is any weapons that have passive benefits that increase your ranged attack damage, because obviously you're going to be attacking at range with bows, so you want to look out for that. You also want to look out for bows that have increased damage when you're at full HP. You rarely get hit as Ironeye if you're playing him properly, because you're staying at range and you're staying out of harm's way. So anything that increases your damage when you're at max HP can really benefit your damage on Ironeye as well. So those are the two I highly recommend looking out for. Additionally, if you can find a bow that adds like fire to attack or lightning or holy to attack as well, that can really increase the damage that you do with that weapon. So those are not bad bonuses to get on them as well. And other passive effects that you might want are things that increase stamina, or stamina recovery, because stamina, again, is often what limits you when you're using the bow. So anything that can increase your stamina is good. So be on the lookout for that. Anything that increases your attack power in some way, like a flat attack power increase, or attack power with a certain damage type, if that's what you have on your bow you want. or maybe physical damage if, most of the bows you're going to be using is physical. You want to look out for those things as well, or anything that can recover your health when you're attacking, because if you're looking for effects that give you max, more damage when you're at max HP, getting things like that can replenish your health as you attack so you can stay at max HP longer to get that extra damage increase are also good. Now, something about bows, though, that I forgot to mention a second ago is that even though they have weapon skills like they did in Elden Ring, because of the nature of the bows in this game, when Ironeye is using them, he fires much more quickly. A lot of the weapon skills are kind of useless in this game. They take longer to use than you would just normally fire. They take FP, which you don't have a ton of, and a lot of easy ways to replenish it like you do in Elden Ring. So most of the time you're not going to use your weapon skill on your bow unless it's like Rain of Arrows, which I think is probably one of the only ones that I would use, simply because it can deal a lot of damage to big targets if you have the spacing, and it's a great way to empty your FP quickly and get lots of burst damage into a boss. So talking about relics on Ironeye, what you really want to look out for on relics is anything that can give you a status effect on your starting weapon, like poison, bleed, something like that, so that you can start immediately applying status effects, because this can really help, especially on early bosses, to take them down, whether it's a field boss or end of night boss. Poison is really, really strong in this game, so you can get that pretty early on. So looking out for status effects on your bow is a good one to put in there. Additionally, anything that affects endurance or stamina recovery, like there are some relics that will give you stamina back when you're attacking, which will allow you to keep up your stamina so you can keep attacking longer, and endurance should just give you more stamina. So those are really good. Or increasing your dexterity. Dexterity is going to increase the damage you do because bows have S and dexterity scaling, so that's going to be good for you as well. So those are things you should really look out for on your relic. And obviously there are character-specific ones that you'll get eventually too, like some of them that will extend the duration of weak point when you use it, and things like that. Like I have one that gives endurance, dexterity, and that, which is really, really strong. All those are useful. I think you unlock that one from defeating many bosses, so it's a while into the game. But these are the things you should be looking for. Status effects, stamina, damage. Anything that improves those things are what you should be looking for relics. Now, in terms of weapon progression as you progress through a run, you're typically going to stick with your starting weapon once you have it kind of decked out with like either a status effect or a damage type or a bump to damage, something like that. And I highly recommend upgrading it using the smithing stones you can buy from a merchant. You can also duck into a mine when you see one, kill the boss in there really, really quickly, get a purple upgrade stone, and you can even upgrade your starting weapon from +1 to +2 with that if you've bought one of those stones from the merchant. And that's a great way to hang on to one that you have a status effect on, because again, status effects are really strong. So that is a valid strategy in this game. But again, you also want to look for other bows that might have damage specific types on them that like the boss you're facing is going to be weak to. For instance, if it says at the beginning the boss is weak to fire, you might want to look for a bow that has fire on it. Or if it says it's weak to, bleed, you might want to look for a bow that has bleed on it, something like that. And while it's good to have a variety of bows early on, once you have that status effect, the best course is usually just upgrading that bow or replacing it with another bow that also has a status effect. Like you might get lucky and get a bow that has bleed on it or sleep on it like I did. And in some of those cases, that's better than having what you're starting with because it deals more damage and bleed can be reapplied so many times, specifically if you have players in your group that also have bleed. In terms of party composition, Ironeye fits really well into either a 2 melee group or another ranged and another melee group. He's very, very versatile. You could even have more than one Ironeye because he is not as gear intensive as some of the other classes are, because if he gets a status effect on his weapon and then just upgrades it, that's often one of the best ways to play him, so he doesn't really need to pick up a lot of bows. And if you had 2 Ironeyes in the group or 3, if they all play that way, then you're not all fighting over loot. So you can definitely stack Ironeyes no problem compared to maybe some other classes like Recluse, where you're going to be fighting over staves because the spells you get from them are really important. But I highly recommend having at least one Ironeye in your group because he's a steady source of damage that can attack a little bit more reliably in terms of Recluse. Recluse has a little bit more burst damage, but Ironeye has a little bit more sustained damage. He isn't gear intensive, so you have more stable runs. You can get, further in most runs without having to worry about what loot you're getting. So he just plays really, really well. So that wraps up our video on Ironeye. I hope you got some helpful tips out of this video. He is probably my favorite class in the game. I absolutely love playing him. I love playing bows in Elden Ring, despite the fact that ammo was limited and you had to craft a lot of the time. It was super fun to play then. It's even more fun to play now if you're playing Ironeye, so I highly recommend you try it out if you haven't yet. As always, if you have other Ironeye tips for players, you can leave them in the comments. And if you have other questions about Ironeye, you can leave them there and I will try and answer them as soon as I can.